So this is awesome. I mean, it's really exciting for me. I have to say a couple words to North Bay, right? And the convoy was revolutionary. It was the beginning of something for us. It was definitely the beginning of something for me, and it's changed the course of history, not just in our community, not just in my personal life, but in Canada and really across the world. And we don't realize it. We don't realize it in the moment. I'm sure you didn't realize it when you first got started, exactly the impact it would have. And I think, thinking about it, you know, looking back over the last year, if it was anything, it was a map. And it was quite literally a map directly to the heart of Canada, to our conscience, to the place that, you know, we make our laws, where we've always seen justice, where we esteem to be better people. It was the heart of Canada, the soul of Canada, the conscience of Canada. And on some level, you decided you were going to go to the heart of the problem, right? The problems were originating in Ottawa, on a political level.
Yes.
And you just made the decision to do a beeline, quite literally a beeline to Ottawa. And I think that it's hard when we look back. So since the convoy, everybody's busy. We're trying to get back to our daily lives. We're trying to catch up. There's still a lot of hurt. There's so much to process that we haven't processed yet. And we're still trying to make sense of it. But to think of it as a map, to think about the 3 weeks in Ottawa as our map for how we are to treat each other, for what it is that we need to do to make change in Canada, that's the thing that I think that I take from that experience. That we can then take that map forward, and we know, you know, sure it was a physical place, but we found each other right across Canada, right across the world. We found each other in Ottawa. And that's something that we absolutely needed. So I would love to spend a few minutes. I'm super, super excited about the book.
Thank you.
Right, that you took the time to tell the story, to give us, like, you know, kind of how the sausage was made. We have so many questions about, you know, what was going on. You know, we saw it through our conversations, we saw it through social media, we saw it through the media, which was incredibly distorted. And it's so amazing to have, you know, the kind of the back of the, you know, like in the back of the truck. Mm-hmm. You know, it's in the boardroom, but really in the back of the truck. Yes. You know. But I wanted to start from the beginning.
Yes.
Right, and one of the interesting things, I've been listening to a lot of your interviews. You've got a background in politics, right? So this wasn't your first time getting people together and representing. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience in politics before the convoy?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was loosely involved in politics, I would say, in the early days. I really just started really paying attention about the time of the sponsorship scandal. And that led me, obviously, all of you know, I've worked in the oil and gas industry in Alberta for a number of years, and with the legislation that the Liberals were bringing in, it was literally killing my province, So I started attending some local rallies and became an organizer with them. Following the 2019 election, I met a gentleman by the name of Peter Downing, who was starting what became the Wexit movement. And that morphed, I sat on the board of directors for that, and then that morphed into the Maverick Party. So we actually created a Western Independence federal political party to run in the last election. And that was a great experience for me. I mean, I also, in the 2019 provincial election, helped my MLA with his campaign as a volunteer, door knocking and stuff like that. So. Yeah, so it's been quite a ride.
The other thing I think that what I found really interesting, like digging into your background, was that you were part of the Yellow Vest movement, right?
Yes.
And I look at these two things as uniquely separate because, you know, one is you're working sort of within the system, and the other one you're sort of like, you know, as a you're agitating around it, right? Like you're holding people to account. So one, you're getting in the system and you're saying, you know, vote for me. We're going to sort of use these levers of power. We're going to do this democratically. But the other really important part of a democracy that not everybody has fully realized or is willing to accept is that being and living in a democracy is about exercising your voice outside the system, right? It's about going to the public square. It's about going to social media and having these conversations publicly and criticizing your elected leaders. Like, that is such an integral part of a successful, working democracy.
And I think that's why they don't want me on social media.
That's right.
Oops.
Yeah. Isn't that ironic? Isn't that ironic?
Yeah.
Speaking of which, in your book you write about, I hadn't heard this, you write about the fact that literally you couldn't even, there was a directive, some Orwellian directive, that you couldn't even look at social media unless somebody was to sort of show you. Otherwise you'd be breaking a condition of your bail.
Well, I can still look at it. What I can't do is I can't log into any of my accounts. I can't post anything, and I can't ask anybody to post on my behalf. And if I do any of those things, I'll go directly to jail. Directly to jail. Yeah. It's a free country, right?
And I think, like, you know, like, so going back to the convoy sort of being a map for Canadians and being a map for just people, especially people living in a democracy, I think, to me, that's one of the big takeaways, is that we underestimate our own voice, right? And we censor ourselves. There is a major problem in Canada with self-censoring. Yes, you are censored, you've been singled out, but we got here because we've been censoring ourselves, because we haven't felt comfortable enough to speak in public and to speak our minds and to suffer the consequences of speaking your mind and doing and saying the right thing. And I think that, like, when I see your experience in the Yellow Jackets, which at the time it was vilified. I'm not going to say I know a lot about it, but I know it was an international movement. I know it was a populist movement. I know it was of the people and for the people, and that was scary for a lot of people in the establishment. Right, and they had to vilify it.
Yep.
And to me, I sort of look at it, low resolution, as one of the first populist movements in my lifetime to arise and to be successful and to get some, attention. I see this as almost like the coattails, like you were sort of forging the way, a few years ago, and maybe getting comfortable in your roots, and then all of a sudden, do you think that played a role in?
Well, I think everything happens for a reason, and I believe we're all put here for a reason. And looking back over my experiences throughout my entire life, I can see now in retrospect how it brought me to this point. It gave me the tools that I would need to be able to process this, and good and bad. I mean, like you just said, people censor themselves because you're not allowed to make a mistake anymore, right? Or you're going to have the angry mob coming after you, and you'll be called a racist and a misogynist and a terrorist and every kind of ist and phobe that you could be called. And so it starts to get a little intimidating and scary, but we've been told forever that we live in a democracy, but I think that's one of the biggest things that the convoy showed, was that the democracy is an illusion. It's no democracy.
And I think on that point, like, when I think about my political history, just as a citizen, being a young liberal and a conservative and an alliance and a progressive conservative, like we grow throughout our lives. I don't want to be pigeonholed for the guy I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I'm ashamed sometimes when I think of some of the wonderful people in this community. The Northern Freedom Alliance, who's helped sponsor the event, the people that really forged the path 2 years ago on the front lines of the freedom community in North Bay and West Nipissing, who went to jail. Right, or who suffered the slings and arrows and got arrested and were pilloried in social media and pilloried in the media, as we tried to make them a pariah because they stood up for what was right.
Yeah.
So, I don't want to be. One of the big takeaways is that if you want to engage in democracy and you want change, you have to participate. You have to take those slings and arrows. And I think when I look back at who I was before, when you stand up and you stand on your 2 feet, like there's a great passage in your book where you talk about digging your heels in, right? Like, this is the time to dig your heels in and to stand up for what's right. What do you think that did? Whether you were right or wrong 10 years ago, 15 years ago in your political beliefs, and another beautiful thing that you said, I think that was very inspirational, was that I think you said that the convoy helped forge your sense of national identity. So whereas at one time, I think we're all just wanting to sort of walk away, right? Like I'm sure in the last couple of years, we're all like, I just want to get a cabin in the woods and just get away from all of this craziness, right? Yeah. And in the same way, like Western Canada's like, you guys are not treating us fairly. We just want to we want to step away. But then something beautiful happened in the experience of all of Canadians coming together and putting the slight differences aside and coming together under this idea. And I think that just bring us back to that place, to that moment where you felt that unity.
Yes, well, the first big epiphany that I had was within a few days of organizing, because we had chats with all the different road captains from all the different provinces. And like I just said, I sat on the board of directors for a Western Independence political party. And because in the West, what we read about the East is how much, they don't want our dirty oil and we're just a bunch of uneducated redneck hillbillies. I'm a proud hillbilly, by the way. But yeah, and all the stuff that we hear about Quebec. And so, within days of organizing this, I was in this chat room talking to one of the Quebec road captains, and they had 1,000 trucks ready already within days. And chatting with them, I got my Google Translate and I'm whatever, because, and it just hit me as I was talking to this lady and these other truckers from Quebec, like, this has all been a goddamn lie. These people were all the same, yeah. And I was the person that would say, like, well, why do we need 2 official languages, whatever, blah, 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 but I get it now. And that's the other thing I understand now. That is their culture. That's who they are. And so it says at the end of my book that I was taking French lessons, but I'm not taking French lessons to be a politician. I'm taking French lessons because I think it's important to include that for me. That's how much that meant to me.
I think that one of the most resounding ideas that came out of the convoy was that we erupted out of despair, and we were cracking under pressure. Like, we saw it in our families, we saw it in our communities, we saw it in politics, we saw it on the media, our institutions. For a lot of us, they were not just failing, they were crumbling. And then so we weren't just losing faith in the challenges we were facing as a country, the challenges we were facing as humanity. Our institutions weren't there to help us. So all of a sudden, so many Canadians, we had to figure it out. We had to, pull our socks up and just and plow through and figure it out. And then what we learned, I think it was a slap down, and then we had an open mind. We came to the table with an open mind, and I think. Again, going back to Ottawa and our map, we saw what unity can be. And it was without the narrative. It was without the third person media telling you the way it's supposed to be or the way it is or the way they see it. Without the division, right? It was Canadians just being Canadians. It was every religion. It was every faith, every nationality. It was just Canadians. There was no labels. The labels were gone, right? Yeah. We came together under suffering, under tyranny, and we knew what we wanted, right? It was like, I remember the day after the convoy came to town, and people just came out to the street, and we were just welcoming the trucks going by again, right, with signs, right, just glowing. And meeting strangers and going up to them and hugging them. And the moment we touched each other, we just burst into tears, right? Like we just needed humanity. Yes. We needed a return to humanity. And it wasn't just our excuse, it was the direction. And I think that that's something they can't take away. Like when I see politics, I'm a little jaded as I'm, as old as I am now. And I see the division. I just see it. When I see it and I see the narratives and I see it, read about it and I see it on the newscast, I'm like, you don't have that anymore. You don't have that control over us anymore. And one of the most beautiful things that the convoy did for Canadians was just return that autonomy, right? That we are now individuals free to communicate, to hug, to love, to not wear masks. I'm not going back. I'm not going back.
And I'm not so sure if they will either. I mean, last year when I was at the inquiry last fall, they were talking in Ontario about masking again, and all of a sudden, it became a thing. They were talking masking, and then they stopped just short of making it a mandate.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I was watching very closely.
I was too. As I was already in Ottawa. I can't get into any more trouble. I mean, come on.
And I think that's a really good point. It's subtle. I see it. I feel it. I read it. I feel it in social media. Like there's that immediate resistance. Like you don't get an inch. You don't get an inch. You've abused it. You push past the line. You broke past it. You don't get an inch. Don't go there, right? And that's a wonderful feeling of success. That's one of the things. One of the checks we can make and say, we've got that now, right? That was a learning experience, and we're just not gonna let that happen again.
Yeah. But just to touch on your unity comment, I mean, I honestly think that's what scared them the most. I mean, we did raise, over $10 million twice, which is unheard of. But honestly, even more than the money and the statement, and I said this to Keith Wilson, it was never about the money. We got there with no money, we stayed with no money, that money anyways, and we got home without that money. It was the statement behind the money. But it was the unity of Canadians, I think, that scared them the most.
Yeah. And this is beautiful, and if I can take that back to North Bay, it was one of my proudest moments. Thinking of North Bay as a community was like we just kicked into this resource mode, like supply lines just popped up, and I remember at the time watching international news, and the Canadian news was just it was brutal, right?
Yeah.
You couldn't even watch it, but the international news was reporting on it, and it was a phenomena. It was a phenomena. The way everybody instinctively knew this was our hope, and there's the front lines, and we might be over here in the back, and we're gonna supply it. What is it? What do you need? Yeah, right? Exactly. We got it. We got people going there every day. You need gas. You need toiletries. You need food, and it was a beautiful moment.
It was.
Right? And
the donations and like you said, I mean. After I started the original Convoy Facebook page, within days I had to start a support group page because we had so many people saying, well, we want to meet you here and bring you coffee and food and DEF and diesel and, and then for those of you that didn't make it to Ottawa, we had different, I call them outposts, where some of the trucks could park. And out there was trailers and sheds full of donations, and they just kept coming, and that was Canadians, that was Canadians taking care of each other, and that's how I grew up. I grew up being raised by a family that picked hitchhikers up that was way back in the day, but it was slightly more safe. But I come from a family of 6 kids, and so, we woke up many times with strangers on our couch, or, we'd bring people home and feed them, or my dad or mom would give them money and help them on their way. That's how I was raised, and that's what the convoy was on a grand scale, And then that's fundamentally who Canadians are. We're good people. So don't ever let them tell you that you need to feel shame again. You don't. You don't have to apologize for things that happened before you were born. We have every reason to be proud. Every reason.
Isn't that amazing? I think that if I go back to, what the convoy emerged out of, it was the darkest period of my life. It was the darkest period of, certainly a generation, several generations. I didn't go through any wars, so I can't speak to that. but it was dark, and for so many different reasons. And the number one reason, I think, wasn't the adversity that we faced. We faced adversity before. It was the gaslighting. It was the lying.
Yeah.
It was the misdirection, and it was the sense that we lost our faith in our leadership, right? And then simultaneously cut us off from each other.
Yeah.
Right? Like it was a double whammy coming at us from all sides.
By design.
By design. By design. You know, we look back now, even then you're like, this has to be by design, but like maybe not. But you look back now and, you know, we see the Twitter files, we see everything coming out through lawsuits and freedom of information. It was by design.
Yeah.
It was by design. And that's a whole other element. But what I see, what happened, you know, I think, you know, just on a personal note, when Facebook started deleting my posts about vitamin D, I realized they don't have our best interests in mind, right? Whatever it was, and it was still unclear at the time exactly what it was, they did not have our best interests in mind. And they were colluding together to make sure that our best interest was not taken care of and we could not communicate with each other. And so on another level, I remember I got word of the convoy through friends, through text messages, through Zello. Did anybody on Zello? Was anybody on Zello?
Oh my God.
Right? It was like the CB radio that you can access online. Like, we found very creative ways to communicate with each other, right? And that's how dark it was. Like, it was, you know, we were cut off from each other.
Yeah.
You know, by design. And the convoy plowed right through that. Right through that. And I just want to go to a moment, which was one of the most beautiful moments in my life, which was when the convoy came to town, right? And it was 30 below for everybody that was there, you know. We had word it was going to be coming through Lakeshore, it was going to be coming through town. Some people coming from up north. We're getting word from friends. I rolled into Tim Hortons around 7:30, 8 o'clock, and there was already people there into Tim Hortons 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning at 30 below, and we started gathering around the trucks, and our toes were absolutely freezing, and we were strangers. We didn't have a lot of contact with strangers at the time, but it was the sense that I don't care.
Yeah.
I do not care. We're going to be there. And I think that it was the gaslighting that forced the issue, because they were saying the worst things about truckers.
Yep.
The worst things. I was reading newspaper articles that simultaneously got me mad and broke my heart, right? That I knew not only was it lying, but it was, you know, trying to punish and discourage, but hurting people to politically score some points.
Yep.
In
Gross.
these, it was so
Disgusting.
gross and so disgusting.
That
it motivated me, and I'm sure the way they spoke about the truckers and the movement and gaslighted everybody and lied and said it was small and it was only a couple trucks and it was about some stupid
highway,
things with tires
or something, highway problems in BC or something like that.
And when we came together in North Bay, there were thousands of people.
I know, it was amazing.
It was so amazing.
And it was so cool.
So tell me what it was like from your side of things. So we were here, we were in the streets, and it was freezing cold or whatever. And tell me what that was like.
It was, I can't remember what time it was, but it felt late. It felt late.
Six,
Yeah, I
maybe
guess
6,
it was.
7. It was,
Yeah, it was so
it was
dark.
dark.
It was really dark, really cold. And I just remember, like I said, I was shocked that we didn't get to go that same route. I totally forgot about that because there were still so many people out there.
Yeah.
You know, bringing food like right up to the truck windows and like so many flags. And I remember somebody from here gave me a little bag with some food or toonies. I think it was toonies in it with some North Bay sticker things on it.
That's awesome.
I mean, people were so creative.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
It was little kids.
Yeah.
Handing out, you know, giving us thank you cards and pictures that they'd drawn, and I mean, the piece that you did, and I saved it and I read it from time to time because it was so beautiful, and I'll never forget how you said, You know, some people didn't even think they would last another week. It was so dark, and all of a sudden, without contacting each other, organizing anything, people just got up off their couches and went out to the highways and saw other people there, like you said, and then just realized that they weren't alone. And I think that was the biggest thing, is that everyone just felt alone, or like they were going crazy. Like I was like, am I the only one that sees what's going on here? Like, am I going crazy?
Yeah.
You know, and you're right, you know, for 2 years, the government heralded truckers, they were the heroes. They likened them to, you know, soldiers and Vimy Ridge and this and that and the supply chain and all that. And then all of a sudden they went from hero to zero. And then they were being vilified. Just like the energy industry that we faced in Alberta, right? Like it's so crazy, but
it broke my heart. It really, that was the thing, I think, that you know, it hurt.
Yes.
It quite literally hurt, because I felt at the time that, you know, the truckers, they were our heroes.
Yes.
Right? It was right out of the storybook.
Yeah.
Right? And it was right exactly at the right moment. Where's Harold? Where's Harold? Harold here? Yes. Who came in?
Oh, I see him up there.
Who came in? Who, you know, came into Ottawa on the front line? Like what a beautiful moment that, you know, must have been. And I was so proud of North Bay that we were there. Like, you know, sure, we called our friends and said, let's go, but you know, are you going to go? And is it real? And what's going on? And we knew instinctively, people just jumped in their cars and just drove to Ottawa. Right? We're like, this is our moment. This is our moment. And we didn't know what was going to happen next, but
Neither did we.
We felt it instinctively, right? That's one of the most, one of the coolest parts of the book, is sort of getting into the weeds of like, what was happening? Like, you get to Ottawa, you realize that this is a monumental experience. You're probably reading, we have what, 12 days on the book, or 13?
5.
The 5 days from BC to...
Well, it started on the 23rd in BC, and I jumped in Metis with Chris Barber the morning of the 24th, and we arrived in Arnprior the night of the 28th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think was it the 29th in...
That we drove up to Parliament Hill,
Yeah. And then you're there, and then you're like, okay, now...
Yeah, now what? I remember saying that to Chris on the way. It's like, so we should probably figure out what we're gonna do when we get there now. Yeah. So we didn't know. Like, I remember I said to Chris, I said, you know, we don't know what we're walking into here. It's like, we could be arrested. I mean, we could get shot. We don't know what we're dealing with, you know? So, and...
It was that, like, there was absolutely the sense. I think people that weren't, there were snipers.
Yes.
Snipers.
Like, here's my question, and especially after sitting through the public the inquiry, when did our leaders, our governments, and our law enforcement become so terrified of their own citizens? When did that happen? Why did we show up there and it's just automatically they just think that we're just a bunch of terrorists that are just like this is what baffles my mind. And I also said to Chris on the way, I mean, fundamentally, a leader of a country, in my opinion, has 2 jobs, fundamentally. Unite your people and protect your rights and freedoms. And while he was skirted out of Ottawa for his own safety, we were doing his job.
He had no choice, he had COVID. He had to leave, he had COVID.
He had to leave, he had COVID, right?
That's right, yeah, that's right. So funny.
It is funny. It's sad, but it's funny.
You're
it's,
right.
It's ironic.
Yeah.
It's like
Disturbing, all of those things.
That's another thing that the convoy did. You know, I think about when you sort of look back and you're sort of counting your wins, it exposed so much, right? Like we were operating in a particular way, and the media was sort of, you know, spinning all these different narratives. And I'm talking for years and decades, like, you know, just this is the way it is. And then it got really intense. The spin got so intense, it got ridiculous for the 2 years, and mean-spirited and all these other things. But it was really ridiculous.
It was.
What the stuff that was being talked about was absolutely ridiculous. And then the convoy and Ottawa exposed the baloney,
Yes.
right? All of the lies, all of the people that were, sort of built up to be leaders, there was no leadership. There was no leadership at the moment we needed them the most.
Yeah.
But truckers and the convoy became the de facto official
It
opposition.
did, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
I remember over the 3 weeks, I'm a political junkie, so I was watching what was going on, and so it drew out who was real, right? In the political arena, when it costs the most, that's who the real leaders are,
Yeah.
right? To say the right thing at the right time, it's not easy, not
Like
even
when
for
they have the most on the line,
when they got the most on the line.
right?
Right, and as like in the context of, if it was truly the most horrific thing we've ever experienced, and on some level it was, but not the level that they tell us it was. Where was the leadership? Everything was about, get in line, shut up, sit down, don't talk to each other. We've got this covered, but they didn't.
No.
Right? There was nothing.
And that was your leaders. I mean, Doug Ford initiated the state of emergency, the provincial state of emergency, and went snowmobiling. Snowmobiling.
The hypocrisy.
Okay, do you really think he would be snowmobiling if his province was under siege? Justin Trudeau, same thing, takes off and runs in the, well, we found out he was skiing.
Wow.
He was skiing in the Laurentians. He was obviously quite concerned about your safety because your capital was taken over by terrorists. I mean, it's nonsense. And you're right. And Chris had said that to me one day too. He's like, he's just, Trudeau he's talking about, he's just mad because we embarrassed him. And I said, no, Chris. I said, we didn't embarrass him. I said, we just handed him a platform and he embarrassed himself. Right? And it was brilliant to behold because everything they did, it was just like they were stumbling and like first we were racists and then we were like white supremacists and then we were infiltrated by the Russians. I looked at Chris when that came on my phone, I'm like, do I even know any Russians? Oh, crazy.
That's there's the popular meme, clown world, right? It's clown world. Why is that so popular? How else can you describe the absurdity of the claims, right? And the claims get more and more absurd in relation to the thing they're trying to run cover for, right? And they were trying to run cover for the most successful humanitarian movement in my lifetime, right?
Yeah.
And it was catching fire quicker than they knew what to do with, right? So as quick as they could censor us, we had another way around it.
That's right.
We found other ways to communicate and talk to each other. And people just knew that this was our moment. And I look at the censorship now and the rewriting of history, the attempt to rewrite history that's going on now, which is why I feel like the accounts are so important, right? To get the facts. They say the history is written by the victor. We are the victors.
Yes, we are.
It is indisputable that the Canada that I live in today is more united on the things that matter, that Canadians are more awake. We got a lot of work to do. It's not about opium or whatever, but we found each other, we've got purpose, we've got a direction, we're writing the true account, we're holding people to account, we're exposing the absurdity and the ridiculousness and the lies. And I just feel that none of this would have been possible without the convoy. I'd love to ask you a couple questions just about getting into the legal aspects of it. One of the things I have to say that of all the speakers, you resounded with me the most, right? So in a time of intense gaslighting and a tremendous amount of lying, you're trying to find the truth in everything, and it was hard. It was really hard. Not everybody wanted to be the sounding board. So many topics were toxic, you couldn't even talk about them. And so trying to figure out what is the convoy and can you even trust it? Like there was when it first appeared on my radar, like, what is it? Like there's so much trickery going on. The way that you communicated and got right to the point and held yourself so firmly in the truth and righteousness, right? You stood next to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and you were coming from the perspective that, we're on the move, but we are defending what's ours.
Yep.
And if you look back at the time, we weren't, like, that was not the ethos in Canada. Everybody was just sort of like, stunned, running from the hills or like running cover, traumatized.
Or traumatized.
Absolutely traumatized.
Yes.
And so I think the idea that it's okay to stand up for what you believe in, to stand up for what's true, it's not just okay, it's the only way forward, right? What gave you the gumption to do this?
Well, I was frustrated myself. I had been following politics for a while, and I just couldn't believe. You turn on Question Period, and I've seen more maturity in a kindergarten class. I would rather turn on my TV and see two sides of the house sitting at a table trying to fix problems than the theater. And it's not even good theater. You may as well watch a wrestling match or a soap opera, because they're not accomplishing anything. And like, why are we? Here, an example is the COVID spending itself. Our local station was your 24/7 COVID information station. The TVs, the posters, it was everywhere. Like, we were bombarded. And I remember saying to my husband, like, if we put as much money into the hospitals, because they're claiming that they're overrun and we don't have the resources, how many billions, and it would have been billions of dollars, went into the marketing campaign for COVID? But we don't have enough hospital beds for people? I was just seeing so much nonsense, and I was seeing people hurting, and people were killing themselves, and we heard that every day coming through here. And even worse, we heard of the people that had already killed themselves. And I was very frustrated, but I believe in this country. I believe in the Canadian people, and I had my when I'm done here, right? Yeah.
I think we all had those. We all had that moment, right?
And I just wanted to help. I literally called Chris Barber and I said, this is my skill set. I am here to serve you. How can I help you?
Wow.
Right? So.
And when I think about where we are now, so we've had so many crossroads. We found each other. We're communicating. Parallel media has popped up. It's healthy. It's robust. It's smart. Right? It's so much smarter. The intelligence, the conversation. Things are, it's almost as though there's the Canada that was, and there's the Canada that is, and it's developing very quickly.
Yeah.
Right? We're heading in a different direction. What do you think is next for us? Like, you've got your challenges. You're just like this. The fight is just beginning, right? You've got the court case coming up. Which is as Orwellian as it can possibly get. Like, I
can't even believe it still.
I can't even believe it. To say that we live in a democracy and that you're facing charges of what was it, conspiracy to mischief or counseling?
Counseling. The original charge was counseling to commit mischief. That was, Chris and I were both charged with that initially, but they had to add the mischief charge later because you can't really be found guilty of counseling a crime that never happened. They're not that smart out there, honestly. So there was counseling to commit mischief, then they added the mischief charge, intimidation, because I'm clearly very intimidating and scary. All 5 feet of me. counseling, intimidation. I think one was disobey a court or a police order, which, and I don't even know. I don't even know. I honestly, I know it sounds flippant and stupid, and I don't even care. I mean, this has absolutely nothing to do with those charges. I know that, they know that, everyone in the world knows that. So let's dance, bring it on, I'm ready to go.
That's true.
Yep,
That's what it is.
yep, they don't scare me.
We've got so many amazing people in this community. So we get in the Northern Freedom Alliance, the volunteers that I've had the pleasure to work with and to get to know and to become friends with, to see the sacrifices that they made. You know, we've got people that were up on charges of facing 10 years in prison for just meeting in the park, just communicating with each other. Hundreds of thousands for hugging, you know, for
Singing, did you remember when we couldn't sing? I mean, that's actually one of the things that I've never heard anybody talk about. I mean, we were all told that COVID was going to kill all of humanity, and we just had like the biggest super spreader event in the whole country. And we're still here to tell the tale.
Everybody should have died, right?
We should
Like, right
all
on
be
the
dead
spot.
right now. Congratulations, all of you. You survived.
There's a gentleman I've had the pleasure to get to know, Dr. Patrick Phillips.
Yes. I'm aware.
So many people have taken the opportunity and they just stood up. In West Nipissing, we had a counselor. She just made international news a few weeks ago for taking the time to apologize for the mandates in our community. Right? She took the lead, and she takes the heat. She took the heat. She's still taking the heat. She was fired from her position, not as a counselor. Thank goodness we still have elected people in this country. But for another position where she was standing up for the rights of healthcare workers, right, to work. And in this consciousness that we're still going through, some people would prefer having the patients suffer, having the nurses work overtime, rather than have unvaccinated people go to work to do what they love, right? It is so incredibly unjust. So the injustice, we're still facing it, right? We still have it, but at least we have each other. We've got a way forward. What's your advice for North Bay? What do you want to impart here to for us and your vision for us moving forward together as a country?
Hold the line. This community, I mean, I've been so lucky to stop here a few times now. I think this is my third stop. I'll definitely be back. But you guys have the most beautiful community, the most beautiful people, and you love freedom, and you know you're all working hard, and just keep doing what you're doing, you know. And we're gonna get there. You know, Canada is too wonderful of a country to not fight for, and I am proud to fight alongside all of you.
There's a moment that you mentioned, and there was a time right before the convoy came to town where the feeling was we couldn't go on another week, right? Like it was so intense and things were coming together. And I feel like that's that's a perception that we have that can make or break you, right? We're on the other side of that now.
Yeah.
And the other side of that is that we are so close to the breakthroughs that we need to make within our government, within our institutions, within our families, within our communities. You don't know how close you are to making that leap and making the change. But what I do know is that I see it and I feel it and I hear it, and the change is in the way people talk to each other. We're further ahead than we were before.
I agree.
We're talking about more serious things. We understand what's on the line. And I think the people, especially in this room, but more and more people across Canada, are willing to hold the line. They're willing to forge, and they're willing to make the sacrifices. And if there's one thing that the convoy taught me, told me, that I learned from it, it was that what transcended our suffering in Canada was people willing to face that suffering, to take it upon themselves, to make the sacrifices for each other. And that was the truth that broke through all the lies, broke through all the propaganda, and flew around the world.
Yeah.
And sent a message that we are free.
Yes.
We choose to be free.
Yeah. Yeah.
They will not hold us. And you do it incrementally, you do it in little bits every day, speaking the truth, speaking your truth, and taking the slings and arrows for speaking that truth.
Yes.
And that was the map of Ottawa. That was the map of the convoy to me. I highly recommend this book. And I thank you. I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I want to thank you and Harold and Josh, Mr. Freedom, and to the Northern Freedom Alliance, and to Escarpment Chapel, the friends that I've made here in this community, that have come together and showed us how to live our lives so that we can change our country. I want to thank you, Diane, the most inspiring and supportive person I could ever want to have in my life. It's that courage. Good enough to stand up for yourself. You're not good enough to stand up for your neighbor. And that's not true.
No.
That's not true.
That's exactly
Right? It's the everyday person who stands up that makes a difference, inspires the next person, and before you know it, you've got a beautiful movement.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to say on behalf of North Bay and our community up here in West Nipissing and the surrounding area, New Lisker, we have a lot of people from all over the place. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for everything that you've done, and we're here with you for the long haul, you know, through the ups and downs, and I'm grateful to have you here tomorrow.
Thank you.
Wow, Tamara, we just love you. And I remember at the farmer's market yesterday, I met a couple people. All I heard was that woman is a Canadian hero. And it's sad because I'm doing some work pushing this event. And Tamara, you got lovers or haters.
Yeah, I know.
There's nobody on the fence with Tamara. And it's very sad for those who don't know and don't understand what's going on and the sacrifices made. But I'll tell you, the ones that know what's going on, you know, we just appreciate you so much. I know we want to get you signing some books. This is Mr. Freedom. Josh, where are you? You know what?
Oh, I think he's coming over there.
I don't know. I want to get you signing books, but you're going to be busy. But if there's we're just wondering about a little Q&A, maybe for Harold.
Yep.
Did you want to take a couple quick questions?
Sure, good, yeah.
Yeah. We want to get her signing books. We'll have Harold answer some questions. Drew, Mr. Freedom, even Dr. Phillips told me he's interested. If you guys want to just ask some questions. If you want to get closer and others want to just chit-chat, that's okay. Don't feel obligated. But
Where is Harold?
okay, if there's a couple people, we'll take maybe 2 questions for now. We'll see about the time because we've got the lineup building here. If you got a question you think that wasn't answered, come on up to my right if you want to ask Tamara a question. Josh, you want to come up here real quick? You want right here?
We're doing a selfie, man.
Oh, you're doing something. Okay.
I'm really excited.
Sorry to bother you.